The roadside diner sat quietly under the rising sun, its neon sign buzzing faintly in the cool morning air. For passing drivers it looked like a simple pit stop on a lonely stretch of highway, a place for hot coffee, warm eggs, and a few minutes away from the road. But for Maya Henderson, the diner meant far more. It was her grandmother's legacy, built with bare hands and fierce determination during a time when a black woman owning a business on this road was nearly unthinkable. Now, years later, Maya carried on that tradition. She polished the counters each morning until they gleamed, just as her grandmother had done, her marine-honed discipline turning daily chores into rituals of honor. Her only companion that morning was Rex, a hulking Rottweiler with dark eyes that never seemed to rest. He stretched out lazily on the floor, but his ears twitched at every sound, every movement outside. To most he looked like a loyal pet, but like his owner, Rex carried scars from another life, a life of training, service and combat. Together they had faced worse than the quiet worries of an empty highway. Maya poured herself a cup of steaming coffee and glanced toward the window. The road stretched flat in both directions, empty but alive with possibility. She sipped, letting the heat settle her, when the sound of gravel crunching broke the calm. A black pickup rolled into the lot, its engine growling like a predator sizing up its prey. 3 men climbed out, boots hitting the ground heavy and deliberate. They were young but hard-looking, leather jackets, tattoos peeking from under sleeves, and eyes that carried too much arrogance for this early hour. Maya didn't flinch. She had seen that look before, in war zones, in barracks, in alleys where danger came cloaked as bravado. She kept her face composed, her body language calm, and whispered softly to Rex, who rose without a sound, and slipped behind the counter like a shadow. The bell above the door jingled as the men entered, their laughter low and mocking. "Well, well," the tallest one said, swaggering to a stool. "Didn't think anyone was crazy enough to run a place out here alone, just you, sweetheart." Maya wiped the counter with a practiced circle, the cloth steady in her hands. "Welcome to Henderson's Diner," she replied evenly. "Coffee's fresh, menu's simple, what'll it be?" The second man snorted. "Coffee, we're not here for breakfast." He leaned against the wall, his bulk blocking part of the room like he owned it. The third one drifted near the door, eyes scanning, body twitching with restless energy. Together they spread out, unconsciously forming a triangle, boxing her in. To them, it was intimidation. To Maya it was a tactical formation she had been drilled to recognize instantly. She placed a mug in front of the leader. "Then maybe you'll sit, drink and move on." Her tone carried no fear, but it wasn't defiance either. It was measured, calculated, the kind of calm that came from years of combat readiness. The leader smirked. "Pretty brave, acting like you're not scared. Don't you know who we are?" "No," Maya said simply, "and I don't care. Either order something or head back out. I've got work to do." The third man by the door chuckled nervously. "She's got some mouth, Silas, maybe we should teach her manners." Maya's jaw tightened, but her hands remained steady. She remembered her grandmother's words, "Never let them see you rattled. Strength isn't in shouting, it's in standing your ground." She leaned slightly against the counter, her body angled in a stance no civilian would notice, balanced, ready to strike if needed. Silas leaned closer, his smile wide but cold. "This road, this diner, it's on our turf now. Which means you don't keep it without paying respect." "Respect," Maya repeated softly, her eyes narrowing. "Respect is earned, not demanded." For a moment, silence filled the room. The men exchanged glances, weighing her tone, deciding whether to push further. Finally, the second man slapped his hand against the counter. "You're all alone out here. No cops, no neighbors, no help. What exactly do you think you can do if we decide to take what we want?" Maya's gaze held firm. "The better question," she said, her voice low but clear, "is what do you think happens when you underestimate the wrong woman?" They laughed at first, a rough sound that tried to mask unease, but something in her eyes unsettled them, not panic, not bravado, but the steady confidence of someone who had seen worse and survived. Silas reached across the counter, his hand aiming for her wrist. In one smooth movement, Maya stepped back, making his grab look clumsy, almost childish. She didn't break eye contact. "Don't touch me," she said flatly. The room thickened with tension. Rex, hidden but alert, gave a low growl that vibrated faintly through the floorboards. The men froze, their eyes darting toward the sound. Maya didn't move, She let the moment hang, the silence stretching taut as a wire. Finally, Silas pulled his hand back, sneer curling his lips. "You think that dog scares us? You think you scare us?" "No," Maya answered, her voice steady as stone, "I don't think, I know." For a heartbeat, the men hesitated. Then the third one barked a laugh, but it came out hollow. "We'll be back. Next time, sweetheart, you won't have your little coffee cup to hide behind." Maya's expression never changed. She watched them turn, boots scraping against tile, shoulders stiff with frustration. The bell above the door jingled again as they left, their laughter forced, too loud for men who thought they'd won. The engine roared, tires spitting gravel, until the sound faded into the distance. Still, Maya didn't relax. She knew their type, they weren't done. This was only a test. She bent, giving Rex a quiet pat. "Good boy," she murmured. His dark eyes studied her, understanding more than most people ever could. She poured another cup of coffee, and looked out at the empty road, knowing peace had just been shattered. The diner wasn't just a business anymore. It had become a battlefield, waiting to unfold. The next morning arrived with a strange heaviness in the air. Rain had passed overnight, leaving the highway slick and shining under the pale dawn. Maya stood at the diner window with a steaming mug in hand, watching the mist roll across the asphalt. She wasn't one to worry, but she had learned long ago that instincts mattered, and her instincts told her last night's encounter was only the beginning. Rex prowled the length of the counter, nails clicking softly on tile, his posture taut with anticipation. He too had sensed it, the unease, the shift in the air. For him it wasn't intuition, it was training. Dogs like Rex didn't just guard, they calculated, observed, prepared. His ears pricked at every passing car, his body stiffening then relaxing as the vehicles disappeared into the distance. Maya moved through her morning routine anyway, counters polished, chairs straightened, grills heated. The ritual wasn't just habit, it was armor, a way to maintain order in a world that sometimes felt like chaos waiting to burst through the door. She adjusted the blinds and glanced at her grandmother's old photo, framed and hung near the register. The woman's eyes seemed to carry the same warning Maya already felt: stand tall but be ready. By mid-morning a few regulars trickled in, truckers grateful for hot eggs, a tired nurse on her way home, an older couple who had been coming since Maya's grandmother first opened the doors. Maya greeted them warmly, her face calm, her voice steady, but her eyes never stopped scanning the windows. Each customer noticed, though none of them said anything. They trusted her, and in their silence was quiet support. Around noon, the black pickup returned. It rumbled into the lot with a deliberate slowness, like a predator circling prey. This time, more men piled out, 5 maybe 6, their swagger louder, their voices echoing as they crossed the gravel. Maya felt the shift in the diner immediately. Conversation hushed, forks froze mid-air, eyes turned toward the door, the bell jingled as the men entered, and suddenly the small diner felt far too small. Silas led the pack again, his sneer wider, his confidence bolstered by the numbers at his back. He slammed his hand against the counter, making the napkin holders rattle. "Didn't like the way you talked to us yesterday," he said loud enough for every patron to hear. "Thought maybe you'd be smarter today." Maya leaned against the counter, arms folded, her stance casual but precise. "You had your coffee, you left, that should have been the end of it." Silas chuckled darkly. "No, sweetheart, the end is when we say it is." He glanced over his shoulder at his men. "Ain't that right?" Laughter filled the diner, harsh and forced. The nurse in the corner quietly slipped out the back door, phone in hand. Maya noticed but didn't draw attention to it. Her focus was locked on the men, on their movements, their spacing, the way their eyes darted around the room. They weren't here for food, they were here to make a point. Rex growled low, the sound vibrating through the air like distant thunder. The gang shifted uneasily, glancing toward the shadowed corner where his dark shape crouched. Silas smirked, but Maya caught the faint hesitation in his eyes. "Call off your mutt," he demanded. "He's not a mutt," Maya replied evenly. "And he doesn't move unless I tell him." One of the men stepped forward, younger, twitchier than the rest. He pointed toward the door. "You gonna pay for protection, lady? That's how this works. You pay or we burn this place down." Gasps rippled from the customers, but Maya's expression didn't change. She set her coffee cup on the counter with deliberate calm. "You know what your problem is?" she asked, her voice low, carrying more weight than volume. you assume I've never fought for something worth protecting. The younger man scoffed, this ain't a battlefield, it's a diner. Maya's eyes hardened, to me there's no difference. The tension cracked like ice underfoot, chairs scraped as customers backed away, sensing what was about to happen. Silas leaned forward, placing both hands on the counter, his face inches from Maya's. You think you scare us. You're just one woman, correction, she said, her gaze unwavering. I'm one Marine, and Marines don't scare easy. Rex's growl deepened, a signal as sharp as a command. The men tensed, caught between arrogance and uncertainty. Silas's jaw twitched, he hadn't expected her to push back, he thought intimidation would break her. Instead her calm made her dangerous. The standoff stretched until the older couple in the booth stood, moving toward the door. We'll come back tomorrow, Maya, the woman said softly, eyes full of worry. Maya nodded once, the couple slipped past the gang, their quiet dignity a reminder that this diner wasn't just a business, it was a lifeline for people who needed it. Silas finally pushed off the counter, spitting on the floor as he turned toward the door. This ain't over, you'll wish you'd played nice. He gestured to his men, and they filed out, muttering threats and curses as they went. Tires squealed across gravel, engines roared, and then the lot was empty again. The silence left behind was heavy, customers whispered, eyes darting between Maya and the windows. She gave them a reassuring smile, though her pulse still thudded steadily. Finish your meals, she said gently, it's just noise. But she knew better, this wasn't noise, it was escalation. They weren't testing anymore. They were preparing. That night, as she closed the diner and turned the locks, Maya stood with Rex at the window, staring out at the highway. Headlights streaked by now and then, fading quickly into darkness. She placed her hand on the dog's broad head, feeling the steady strength beneath his fur. They'll come back, she murmured, and when they do, we'll be ready. Her reflection in the glass stared back, not just the diner owner, but the Marine who had once stood watch in deserts and mountains, who had faced fire and fear, and walked away stronger. She wasn't looking for war, but if war came to her doorstep, she would not run. Darkness draped the highway that night, a heavy blanket pierced only by the occasional sweep of headlights. Inside the diner, the air smelled faintly of coffee and lemon cleaner, but beneath it lingered something sharper, the unmistakable tension of waiting. Maya sat at the counter with Rex at her feet, the dog's ears twitching at every sound beyond the walls. She had reinforced the doors, checked the windows twice, and reviewed the old security cameras, though she knew their grainy footage would never hold up against determined men. What she trusted most was instinct, sharpened by combat, and the silent readiness of the animal at her side. The low rumble came first, a vibration through the ground more than a sound. Rex's head lifted, growl rising from deep in his chest. Maya set her coffee aside and moved to the window. Headlights appeared in the distance, more than one set, growing larger as they barreled down the highway. Engines snarled as 3 vehicles pulled into the lot, gravel spraying under their tires, doors slammed. Voices rose, cruel laughter carried on the night air. 7, maybe 8 men this time. Silas at the front, his swagger louder, his arrogance swollen by numbers. They had come not to scare her, but to finish what they started. Maya exhaled slowly, steadying her pulse. Stay close, she whispered to Rex. The dog lowered into a crouch, muscles quivering with controlled power. The men spread across the lot, some carrying bottles, others with the outline of weapons under their jackets. Their boots crunched toward the diner. A rock struck the door, rattling the frame. Another smashed against the window, though the glass held. Then came the voice, loud and mocking. Come out, Marine, Silas shouted. We know what you are. Think your training makes you untouchable. Tonight we prove otherwise. Maya didn't flinch. She stepped into the open, visible through the window, her posture calm but unyielding. You should have walked away, she called back. Now you'll learn why underestimating me was your biggest mistake. The men jeered, their bravado echoing against the empty highway. One hurled a bottle against the siding, flames erupting where it shattered. The fire licked up the wood, orange light dancing across their faces. They laughed emboldened, convinced they had already won. But in their arrogance, they forgot she had chosen this battleground, not them. Maya moved to the back door, silent as shadow, Rex close behind. She slipped outside into the cool night, circling wide through the darkness, until she stood behind the gang. They were so focused on the diner they never noticed. The marine training she thought she'd left behind surged through her muscles like muscle memory awakened. Every movement deliberate, every step calculated. She whistled once. Sharp, commanding. Rex launched forward, a blur of black muscle. His growl tore through the night as he barreled into the nearest man, sending him crashing to the ground. Screams erupted, bottles clattered, the gang spun, caught in chaos. Maya stepped from the shadows, her stance wide, her voice a whip crack. Enough. The word cut through the noise, sharp and unrelenting. The men froze, their bravado collapsing under the weight of her calm authority. One clutched his bleeding arm where Rex had struck, another scrambled backward across the gravel, fear etched across his face. Silas's sneer faltered, rage flickering behind his eyes as he realized the balance had shifted. He lunged at her, knife flashing in the firelight, but Maya sidestepped, her elbow slamming into his ribs with the precision of training honed overseas. He stumbled, gasping, the knife clattering to the ground. "Walk away," Maya ordered, her voice carrying the same authority she once used with platoons under fire. "This is your last chance." The men hesitated, pride battling fear. Rex growled, his teeth bared, every muscle ready to spring again. The fire spread along the diner wall, crackling, painting the night in harsh light. Maya's eyes blazed in its glow, unflinching, resolute. She wasn't just defending a building, she was defending legacy, community, every sacrifice her grandmother had made to keep this place alive. And in that moment, even the gang understood, this was no ordinary woman standing before them. This was a Marine, who had already survived battlefields they couldn't imagine. Silas staggered to his feet, clutching his side, his arrogance cracked, replaced with something uglier, humiliation. "This isn't over," he spat, voice hoarse with rage. "We'll be back. You can't stop us all." "Try," Maya said, her tone cold as steel, "but remember, every time you come, you leave weaker than before. And one day you won't leave at all." The silence that followed was heavier than the night itself. Finally Silas snarled a curse, signaling his men. They backed away, boots crunching retreat, their bravado leaking out like air from a punctured tire. Engines roared to life, tires screeched, and within moments, the lot was empty again. Only the flicker of fire and the echo of their failed intimidation remained. Maya turned, grabbing a bucket from the side shed, dousing the flames before they could spread. Her muscles trembled with the fading surge of adrenaline, but her movements stayed steady. Rex stood beside her, chest heaving, eyes still fixed on the road as if daring them to return. She knelt, resting a hand on his fur. "Good boy," she whispered. His steady breathing was answer enough. By dawn, the diner bore scars, scorched siding, broken glass, scattered gravel stained dark, but it still stood. Maya brewed coffee, cleaned the counter, and opened the blinds as the sun broke over the horizon. Her grandmother's photo hung on the wall, its frame singed but unbroken. Customers began arriving, their eyes wide at the damage, but their loyalty stronger. They filled the booths, offered quiet words, left extra bills under their plates. One old trucker muttered, "We've got your back," before tipping his cap and heading out. Maya smiled faintly, pouring coffee, her voice calm as she greeted each one. Inside, she carried the weight of the night, the knowledge that the fight wasn't finished. But she also carried something stronger, the certainty that she wouldn't bend, wouldn't yield. She was a Marine. This diner was her ground. And no matter how many times they came, no matter how loud their threats, she would meet them the same way, unshaken, unbroken, unafraid.